the NFL stands for not for long.
Offset, Sharga and Armstead. Roll out, Walker still running out. Looks to the left, wide open, Thompson touchdown. Colin Thompson with the touchdown. There was nobody within 20 yards of him.
What a catch off the bobble. Colin Thompson scoops it up.
Lofting corner, the end zone. It is caught for the touchdown. The first NFL touch for Colin Thompson is a score.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Colin Thompson Show, presented by Not For Long Media. Hope everybody had an amazing weekend. We sure did here in my house, celebrating my wife's 30th birthday with friends and family, and Father's Day, which we'll get more into on our second episode this week. We're going to have a interview that we did a couple weeks back with Brett Kollmann. This guy, if you don't know who he is a football media genius. I think he's awesome. A great follow across all platforms, truly diving into more football. If you want to learn about the game beyond the fantasy football stuff, who's going to have the most catches and this, that, the other thing. If you want to learn offensive line play and this quarterback and this, that, Brett Kollmann, this is for you. I mean, he is for you. This is an unbelievable interview. Did a few weeks back, like I said, talked about a lot of stuff. But I want to talk about our friends over at the original Fudge Kitchen, shipping fudge and sweet treats across the country. It is time, July 4th. If they can't make it down the Jersey Shore, send your friends some fudge. FudgeKitchens.com. Bring the Jersey Shore to them and that's salt, sweet, saltwater taffy. Check them out, FudgeKitchens.com. First time listening to our show, you can find us on all platforms. All of our other shows at Not For Long Media, you can find it on all platforms, all social media, and all places you listen to shows. But again, happy Father's Day to the fathers out there. I would be nowhere without my dad and my grandfather and my uncles and my coaches and all those father figures in my life. This media company wouldn't exist. My playing career would not exist. The strong relationship I have with my wife and friends and family would not exist without my dad and the wonderful people that, he surrounded me with, especially when it comes to men. Very fortunate to that. And we're going to get into that later in the week. So happy Father's Day. Happy 30th birthday to my wife, Sydney. And again, I hope you guys really enjoy Brett Kollmann. You're just going to hear how blown away I was. And it was an amazing conversation. We were really to dive in and peel back onions and layers and get into it. So without further ado, I'll shut up. This is the Colin Thompson Show, brought to you by Not For Long Media. I hope you guys enjoy Brett Kollmann. All right, we got the great Brett Kollmann in the building today. How you doing today, Brett?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Bro, first off, I want to apologize, okay? Not that you need my fandom, because you have plenty of it. You have a fantastic YouTube page, okay? And that's not just me blowing smoke. I am blown away. And I am subscribed. I am alerted. I am all the things that you're telling your followers to do. I am all in. So I just love your work, man. I'm jacked up to have you on the show.
I appreciate that.
There is a lack of people in the media, people around the game of football that aren't in buildings talking about the game the real way. Mm-hmm. Talking about it like an NFL player would, sitting at a bar on a bye week saying, well, Carson went through that pick. Well, did Carson went through that pick, or like the tackle fell, or whatever it may be? Like, I love the inside of the game, obviously, as a player, but how did you fall in love with it, of just breaking things down and presenting it to the country, saying, hey, you know what, this is going to be a good idea because there's a space available here?
I just think football fans in general love to learn, right? And it's always seen as like, it's a sport for jocks, and it's just a bunch of people running around hitting each other. And it's like, no, all these guys are doing rocket science in real time while they're out there on the field. Like, it is the most difficult team sport to play, in my opinion, because it is extraordinarily complicated, and it gets more complicated every single year, right?
Yeah.
And it's not just schemes, it's about techniques. And there's also a human element too, right? Like you can get presented a certain look, a certain way. And then the next time you see it, you're convinced that that's what you're seeing just based on, the whites of a guard's knuckles or the direction that a receiver has their toe pointed pre-snap. It's like, oh, this is the release that I'm getting. And then they get you, right? Like, it's a ruse. They're presenting something pre-snap that you're not actually seeing. And so there's like that human deception element too, times 22 guys on the field. And the thing that I want people to understand is like fourth quarter in the Super Bowl, every single play at that point in the season for all 22 guys that are on the field and all the dozens of coaches that are on the sideline, every single play in that situation is the culmination of experiences that they've had in the last 6 months, things that they've gone through, injuries that they've sustained, things that they've seen on tape, things that they've learned from. All their failures, all their successes comes down to those plays in the fourth quarter. And for guys that have been in the league for 10 years, it's a culmination of 10 years of learning and 10 years of failure and success. And there is no team sport that complicated where thousands upon thousands upon thousands of reps doing the same thing over and over again against dozens of different looks, against dozens of different guys, where it all comes down to that one play. That's why the game is great.
All right, Jack, call it. My favorite guest of all time. End the episode. That's a wrap. Wow. How articulately said, well said. Man, there's a lot to unpack. That's like my new term on the show. I need to change that one. There's a lot to unpack there, which is fact. Like if you think about basketball, right? Very individualized. Player could be just shooting jumpers in the offseason, right? He's working on his jumper because for that one moment, for that one shot. But the amount of times you practice outside zone and inside zone and fitting your backside hand on a cutoff block and your first step and working on your sprinting and working on that, you practice in football way more than you play. And again, I'm not sitting on here. I'm not going to come on my show and I'm going to say football's the best sport in the world and everyone else. No, but there's an intricacy to it that you're saying, and it's the best sport to you and I. But there's an intricacy there of just everything boils down to the field. That's why I'm a firm believer of taking care of things off the field, because they really trend on to talk about the human element. I went right to personal things, and I'm kind of all over here because there's so much things you digest, you had to say, and just so really well put. Where do I even go from here? Because I'm just on my heels. How unprofessional of me. The human side of it too. It's a really unique thing you brought up about film study. And that's what makes the pros the best, right? Because you think you have them. Every week, the DN, he's cocked in this way. They're bringing some sort of pressure off the edge. Every week, the DN gets down to a 4-eye, or he's in a 5 or whatever it may be. They're bringing, boundary pressure. There are the things that you're looking at offensively. Has there been things that have caught your eyes over the years watching film? You're like, yep, they're doing this all the time. Every time they do this, they're doing this. And then one week you're watching and it gets kind of debunked. Have you seen that before?
Oh, yeah. Like the Patriots, and this was 10 years ago, the Patriots would run mesh. Like they would run empty mesh out of a certain look that they would motion into, and they did it like 10 times throughout the course of the season. And I'm trying to remember what AFC team they were playing. It was like 2011 in the playoffs. So that was back when they had, the Boston TE party, and they would get into big personnel and then spread out and run empty with 2 tight ends just because they could, right? And so they would run empty mesh out of this one look over and over and over again. And then they got to the playoffs and they used the same motion. They got to it, and then they converted the 2 unders on mesh into return routes because they knew that they were gonna play inside leverage on it and like step in the bucket, and then Jules, caught a return route for a big gain on it, and I was like, son of a bitch, like they spent all year setting that play up for a random first down in like the second quarter, right? Like I can't remember exactly when it was and what game it was, but I was like, they spent 5 months setting up that play.
I could see Jules with his like yellow undershirt on and like him catching that ball with the same cleats he wore his whole career, and he's just running around like knifing it for 20. No, it's it's very interesting. That's a scheme wise. I've seen it with players individually where, again, I'm watching a D end, an outside backer. You know, you look at Cam Irving and not Cam Irving. Christ, what's his name in Seattle? Defensive end.
Right now?
Yeah.
No, can't remember. Well, so they have a whole rotation in Seattle now.
No, it's what's his name? Who's been there forever.
Oh, Bruce Irvin. That's you're talking about Bruce Irvin?
Yeah, Cam Irving's my former teammate at Carolina. Thank you, Bruce. Bruce would get tight, right? And right when he'd get tight and his shoe would be on your outside foot, he'd cross face, and then you would kind of break the puzzle and know it's coming. Sometimes he'd do it and he'd jump outside and set the edge, and you're like, oh, he's starting to mess with me a little bit. Like I've never played Bruce, but last year we played them and we were prepping the tight ends and talking to different things and looks with our tight end coach in Carolina, Kevin Gilbride Jr., about what I think Seattle's going to do and how they're going to do it. For me, my favorite offense to watch in the NFL, I watch the first half of every one of their games just about every week. If I have a little bit more time, I watch their whole game, is the San Francisco 49ers. I think it's the most fun offense to watch if you're a football nerd.
They're evil. They're evil.
Emotions, the shifts, the changes for the same exact plays. I mean, you know, and maybe a wrinkle here and there. What the personnel groupings to match it and make it go like an unbelievable puzzle, because what they have at fullback and tight end, what they have at receiver because they can block, what they have at running back even without C-Mac, now with C-Mac, that's a whole nother ball game. And then, the smart, intelligent quarterbacks they've had to get things done at a high level. Can't imagine playing quarterback in that system. But I pick up a lot of things from the tight ends over there. I put a lot of it into my game. What say you? Your favorite offense to watch in the NFL on a weekly basis?
I would say it's either Andy in Kansas City or it's Kyle. And I would say Mike McDaniel, Miami too, right? Which is in that same kind of Shanahan vein. But especially when looking at the Shanahan guys, Mike McDaniel more than probably anybody else, their ability to create angles and space, and they help their offensive linemen like no other offensive coaches by giving them angles to work with. They don't make you do a block that's really hard to do. Like if the linebackers are in a certain look where the center knows, like, I got to get out, like, I'm sorry, I can't give you my backside hand. I got to go. I got to get there right now. They are the type of offense that's not going to make that backside guard try to handle a shade by themselves, right? They will change it and they'll turn it into a fold, and they'll have the backside guard just fold around the center because the center's got a better angle, and they'll know, like, hey, we're going to lose a couple steps on that mic, but that's fine, because if the center, or if the shade's pinned backside and the mic's scraping over the top and he's giving us his shoulder, guess what? We'll just push him front side. The nose is backside, and we got a seam anyway, right? So they're not going to try to make two guys do really tough blocks, trying to beat a mic front side and trying to, reach a shade by themselves. They're not going to make them do that. They're just going to fucking fold. And it just creates angles, and it creates a seam. And even if it's not drawn up the way it is in the playbook, they give their offensive linemen answers so that they don't make them do things that are overly difficult against freak athletes. Like, you're not going to try to reach Quinnen Williams. Why bother? Like, do something else.
Yeah, if you watch football, what they do just makes sense. I think that's kind of the best way I explain it. It's like, we're going to run the football. Our play action is going to look the same exact way. We're going to have an RPO off of different things. We're going to put our players in the best position for space. Now with the RPO game and the way they spread people out in the pass run option game too, there's no mistake why now their roster is insane too. But it's no mistake why every year, and what they did in Atlanta too, when Shanahan was the OC with Dan Quinn as the head coach, what they did offensively. Let's see, defensively, I'm going to think about mine, but I'm going to ask you your favorite defense to watch in the NFL on a weekly basis.
Ooh, it kind of changes from year to year, because, there was a time where I was like, man, Brian Flores calling 15% of the time, no matter what. That's fun. But then teams figured out how to beat 0. So I was like, maybe don't do that as much. Vic Fangio, I feel, is kind of timeless, right? Everybody loves Vic Fangio. The things he gets away with from a coverage perspective are fascinating. He's like the only guy that I think can play not quarter, half, but half, quarter, and play a half field safety to the passing strength and get away with it. I'm like, that's risky, but it works for Vic because he's Vic, right?
And he has unreal D lines usually.
That helps.
He's just got dudes, right? And that's any really good defense. If I'm thinking through the defenses, I mean, the Niners are so much fun to watch because they're how the wide nines create issues for tackles and tight ends and really everybody. And then how they can have such great team speed on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, I hate go Niners back to back, but just the way they create problems of the teams we watch on film. And then last year we played the Niners in Carolina, and I'm thinking of all the teams we played. We played some unbelievable defenses. Don't get me wrong. But man,
you know what makes the Niners go though is Fred, because they can, like, when they're in the second half, right, and they got like a 8-point lead or a 9-point lead, something like that, they play more cover 2 than anybody else because they can. You know, when you have Fred, who, like, their safeties can just expand so far over the top down the boundary, so you're not getting chunks outside because they know they have Fred running the pole up the middle. And you can't get away from him. Like, even if you kind of like lean inside on the seam and then stop and break in, that's what some people try to do, right? Is they try to get the linebacker to panic, and they'll kind of like really bend that seam up the middle because they're trying to get the linebacker to turn his head, and then they slam on the brakes and they whip back out. Fred's not going to do that. He's just going to literally slide into your back hip and make you break down because he knows that he's good enough that even if you're a step on him, even if the ball hits your hands, you're not going to the ground with it. Like, he's that good in coverage. And no other defense can get away with that. No other defense can play cover 2 that much when the offense knows they're playing cover 2 and get away with it. It's an insane advantage having him at Mike. It's
a great point. And it goes back to the D-line too. It's like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Nick's not giving you more than 2.5 seconds anyway. So.
No, there's so much to talk about. And I'm looking at my TV here, and they're going through, the different opponents for all these different teams. And it's always fun, the schedule release thing. But before we get into schedule stuff, is there a trend offensively that you've seen in the last couple of years? This is great, by the way. I mean, I've already said this to you already. This is awesome because this is like real football talk. And my real diehard football people are going to be like, okay, stop talking, Colin. Let this guy go. My question for you is there a trend offensively you've seen over the last couple of years where you're like, man, this has become a real thing?
Motion at the snap, I would say, especially in the run game. And we see it with Shanahan. We saw it with Greg Roman. And I think it just – there are some quarterbacks, especially old school quarterbacks, that they prefer things to be static so they can see things and the picture isn't changing on them. And I think that for a while, especially in the 2000s and the 2010s, those older quarterbacks, especially the ones that can't move as well, were like, I want everything to be stationary so that if a rotation is happening, I know that it's the defense that's rotating and not them reacting, which is a different mindset to have, right? We talk about the human element. If you see a safety rotation that is not a reaction to motion, it's because they're getting into a certain coverage. And there are some quarterbacks that it's like, if the safeties are moving, I want to know it's not because of us, it's because that's what they're getting into. And then I can go into if it's middle field closed versus middle field open reads. There are some quarterbacks now that are so used to seeing all these pre-snap or these, at the snap rotations and stuff, where in order to respond to that, the new age offenses are doing motion at the snap so that you don't feel comfortable doing a rotation at the snap because you might be rotating into something that's wrong. And so now they're forcing defenses to be stationary and reactive rather than proactive. And it really screws up run fits. It really screws up in terms of, like if let's just say the jet motion, right? There's a lot of defenses that stay in 2 high safeties no matter what now. Even if they have cover 3 called, they'll present it too high at first because if they're getting motion, they don't know which safety is going to the post and which is rotating. So they'll use those safeties to come from the top of the shelf to handle that motion. And it makes them reactive, which you don't want to be on defense, because if the offense knows that they can use motion at the snap to determine which safety is going deep and which one isn't, that means they know which which safety has their back turned. And so they can hit that seam on the backside hit of that safety. And it's just that evolution, right, of how it used to be offenses preferred no motion so they could track rotations to now offenses using motion so they can dictate rotations is an entirely new world of offense. And it makes it so damn hard to stop.
Guys, if you want more of this stuff, we're going to keep talking about it, but just check out Brett Kollmann's YouTube page if you're a football junkie and you want to learn more as a fan and educate yourself, which I think the fan bases really want to now. I'm from Philly. Yes, so it's going to be the scream and yell fan that, you know, the quarterback should have done this every play, and that fan, yeah, sure, everybody's going to be that type of fan. But there's really a good group of people that want to really learn the game and ask questions and talk about why, you know, split safety, why they're trying to exploit the middle of the field or why they're not trying to because of a guy like Fred Warner. Lots to talk about. Now, for me, defensive trends, let's see, and I want to hear your thoughts and where you're at. I think obviously a big defensive trend you're seeing now, and that's probably because you know, Flores, Martindale, those guys are getting more, is cover zero, right? Pressure until you get dusted. But people are going to bring pressure. It's going to create turnovers. It's going to create sacks. It's going to create these cover zero meetings we have. And for those listening at home, what cover zero is, no safety in the middle of the field. They're bringing one more than you can protect. Everyone else is man-to-man coverage. DBs are usually 6 to 8 yards off the receivers, tight ends, knowing that's going to be a quick throw, and they are back. They're not backpedaling. They are going to drive on it because it's a slant. It's a slant and go. It's a hitch. It's a lookie. The ball's coming out right away. So I think the trend has been cover zero because the amount of time you have to spend as an offense trying to figure out protections, trying to figure out what to do, just for the fact that your quarterback got to put it exactly where he needs to put it, why the receiver's getting really tough technique, and there's someone right in the quarterback's face. So I would say cover zero. And then defensive line-wise, I think you see more wide nines. You see more, right? A couple of years ago, I remember being in Philly. It's like Justin Babbitt, the Eagles shouldn't be in a wide nine. And now I'm like, man, like, holy cow. It's a pain in the ass if you're a player because it's almost, they call it a 97 technique. I start in a 9, I end up in a 7. If I go to reach you, you're blowing through my inside shoulder and you're blowing me up. So you're trying to knock them back towards the sideline and your inside shoulder is getting blown open. And then the triple with you and the tackle, the double team doesn't work. Then it gets split and you look like an ass and you're like, I don't know what you want me to do. And if you down block,
but the reason why they do that too is because the safety's screaming, like the safety's force anyway. Like they don't need the edge to be forced. They're going inside no matter what.
And they have a freaking unit out there usually, right, playing at Boza. So, or if you go down, he's playing through your outside shoulder and he's blowing you up. So yeah, there's a lot of really good stuff. I think for me, it'd be more wide nines. Running linebackers, right? That's been the new thing. I remember playing in college. A lot of guys couldn't run as well. Now everybody can run. If you can't, you'll be exploited. So there are a lot there. Wide nines, moving backers really can cover. And then cover zero.
Yeah, you know, the thing with zero, and I don't know how much you guys were watching Dable. And then in this past year, also the Bills when they went down to Miami, and Miami tried zero a little bit early on. I think it was actually the first play of the game they called zero.
They have too many guys though. The Bills are too seasoned. It's too much organization. They can take advantage of it.
What's fascinating though, from a schematic perspective, and I saw them totally rip this off what the Ravens did the year before, because the Dolphins called zero 35 times in one game against the Ravens the season prior. And I did a video.
You have a great cut up on that, by the way. Great video on it. I know you just said that. It's fantastic. If you're a Ravens fan, you're a Dolphins fan, whatever. You just want to learn more about defense and offense. Watch your tape. It's 35 plays, right? Ravens, Dolphins. Yeah. I watched it. It's fantastic.
And what I found fascinating though was one of the answers the Ravens had in that game. They didn't hit it. They didn't hit the throw, but schematically, it was a great answer for zero, and the Bills ripped it off the next year. It was week 3. And what they did, and I'm curious to see when you guys were in meetings if you saw this, is they started out in empty. They got the zero presentation, and then they motioned a tight end. And they didn't show that tight end coming in motion was going to be a late add for protection. And so the DB that was covering him, which typically if you motion in and you're static, right? We talk about motion at the snap. If you motion in and you're static, then that DB is just going to add on and they're going to outnumber you again. But they did it at the snap. So they didn't know at the snap that he was actually motioning in to even up in the protection. And so that DB that was covering him didn't have time to come down and add on anyway. So they got 2.5 seconds with no safety help deep, and Diggs ran like a seam route to grass, right? And there's nothing the Dolphins, and I don't think they called zero the rest of the game because they're like, oh shit, we have no answer for that. So
and
that's just a little cat and mouse. Yeah,
and that's what it takes. You have to hit them, but if not, like we played Miami, Cam Newton was our quarterback in Carolina. I was inactive. I was staying on the sideline in street clothes, and they brought zero every time, right? New quarterback, right? Cam is still a stud, but can't throw it like he used to. That's no secret. And and you're just like, man, this is such a pain in the ass. Can you guys just stop and can we just play real football? Everyone's like, yeah, we're gonna have this check here for the run game. We're gonna run it here, protect it here, right? Your meetings are all like, gosh, we're gonna knock the hell out of cover zero, and then you face it. Yeah, so I think that'd be that's a great call. Yeah, it's an interesting thing. And it's just, I think the tight end position has changed a lot of how the NFL functions. Now it's more of a pass catcher now, but it's funny. These guys come in at pass catchers, and then like 3 years later, they have to block duo in a crunch time. And like the guys are getting it done because listen, boys, like, yeah, you want to catch balls all you want, but if you can't, it's what kept me alive because I'm a blocking guy. I would say I'm a blocking tight end who's got great hands. I'm just super slow and I can't separate versus man to man. I can, but not only you're not paying me $100 million to do it, So I know
it's all fun and games for those big slot guys until the Y gets hurt, and then you got to play Y, and you're like, oh god,
yeah,
I gotta block Nick Bosa.
I gotta block Bosa and hold on to for dear life. You got to strike the shit out of him and hold on. So no, it's always great debate. I think the tight end position, and I want to ask you because you've been watching film for a while. I think Rob Gronkowski is the king. I think there's really no one even close to him. Everyone's like, whoa, receiving yard. Listen, the guy is the best blocking tight end in the league his entire time he was there. And I seen a lot of really good Mercedes Lewis, Chris Manhurst, really Ian Thomas. I mean, I played with a lot of really good guys. Gronk, I mean, just dominant. Pass protection, dominant. And then, of course, what I think separated him was his just FU, big body, put the ball anywhere near him, one-handed catches, like just chaos. He was just chaos. He's a build-a player. I think he's the best ever. Obviously, a huge fan of Kittle and Kelsey. Mark Andrews. I'm a huge Jason Witten guy. Antonio Gates, like they all, Jimmy Graham. It's all different people, but to me, Gronk is the greatest ever. What are your thoughts?
I think, apologies if you can hear the helicopter above me. I think Kittle is also an elite blocking tight end, but in a different way than Gronk. And I think he has certain strengths that Gronk didn't have. And Gronk obviously had strengths that Kittle didn't have. If I need somebody who can go out there and dig out a 5 technique that widens out to play either a loose 5 or a 6, and he's got to dig him out, it's going to be Gronk, right? If I need somebody who is in line and there's a 9, and, we talk about 9 getting into a 7, going the inside shoulder, and everything like that. Somebody who, A, can take a bucket step and reach him and can actually do that so the tackle doesn't have to worry about it, and they can just throw an arm at the 3 or if it's like a loose 3 or /4-eye, whatever you want to call it, and then get up to the second level because your tight end can reach the edge. And if he goes inside, he can slam on the brakes and hold him there. So he's not knifing, he's just stuck. And all of a sudden you got the edge because Trent's out there. He's picking off some poor linebacker, right? If I need any of that type of stuff where it's more about getting to an angle than it is about blowing somebody up, I would take Kittle, but
that's a good point. It's 2 different offenses. And I think
2 different offenses.
Right? Like New England's very like duo-based, like power punch, play action, counter-based. Gronk would run those routes over the middle. But yeah, it's a great point. Like, and I think too, it goes back to a lot of people understand is not everyone's on the same page all the time. And what New England was too, of course, but the Niners do. This is like a Niners podcast today. Is like everyone's on the same page in the run game. Like everyone knows the tackle's going to be there if you're double teaming them, if you're a tight end. Like there's no debate. Like a lot of organizations I played in, sometimes everyone says it. Yeah, the title when you go reach the Y9, the tackle's going to be right there if he plays inside. Tackle takes 1 step, goes to the backer, and you look like an idiot. So yeah. I think too he plays reckless because that's a part of the scheme of we're all going to be running on a track. We're not looking back. We are hauling ass. I played for the late great George DeLeon, who was the O-line coach of the Browns when Shanahan was the OC. And those some good Browns, like I think that was Crowell, like did some good backs, like Jordan Cameron. The O-line was nasty with Batonio and Swartz and obviously Joe Thomas.
They had like four Pro Bowlers on that offensive line. It was insane.
So people don't really talk about that Browns team, but like I think Hoyer was the quarterback. But I watched a lot of that tape, and everyone's like, it's like it looks like a puppet show. Everyone's on the same lines and strings. You pull here, this guy goes here. And again, if you watch football, folks, like just watch the Niners. That's how it's done. Everyone teaches it, but they execute it. I know we could talk about. Let's talk about somebody other than the Niners here because we'll be here all day. I just love their pieces. I love what they do. Offensively, huge Kittle fan. I think he's the best tight end in the league. I think Travis Kelce is a Hall of Fame receiver. And that doesn't take anything away from Travis. Being a Hall of Famer is extremely impossible, and he is a Hall of Famer, but he doesn't really block anybody.
He even admits that, right? He knows what his role is. Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. Okay, so we're Philly-based. I'm from Philly. Eagles offense this year, I think, did an amazing job. When you talk about accumulation of talent, they have it at all spots and lots of it. I think with them is very unique. They went because Sirianni comes from Frank Wright, comes from Doug Peterson, comes from Andy Reid, comes from Matt Nagy. It's all the same deal. But to me, they spread it out a little bit, became a little bit more of a college offense with the read option and RPO and making them cover the whole field. You don't see many tight ends on the field with the Eagles. If not, they're slicing back or they're play action here or they're getting in the slot for an RPO, and you just let these 5 offensive linemen lean on 4D linemen and they read one of them. What do you think about the Eagles offense? I think it's extremely explosive. I know it's not a hot take, but I think it's a really fun one to watch.
Everything they did offensively was to frustrate you with little body shots, right? To get you into cover 1. That's what they wanted. They were going to annoy you until you gave them what they wanted, which was middle field close, so single high safety with press man coverage on the outside. And then 989, folks. That's what we're calling. A.J. Brown, go run your go route. Jalen's going to drop it to you. He had an 80% contested catch rate on go balls down the sideline this year. Unreal. It's not possible. But it was possible because Jalen was the best at throwing that fade ball in the entire league. And you could literally see it. Like there were some times where they had stuff on, and you could see Jalen pre-snap, and he's like, "Oh my God, they gave me cover 1." And he would just kind of do this to AJ, and he's like, "Just come 2 yards in, give yourself a little bit more space, and then boom, ball snap, go." And it was wicked. Like it was just evil, right? Because you knew it was coming. They were going to do all the RPO stuff. They were going to, call inside zone 8 times in a row until you got tired of it, and they're like, "We need another body down here," and then there it is. There's the bomb. And they did it every week, and nobody could ever stop them because they're better than you. Like, that's just how it is.
I love it. And the best part about this is I hope we build a rapport and you can come back on because there's so much I want to ask you here, and I want to get a couple of good questions here before we wrap things up. Okay. So where do I even go from here? Because my mind is spinning on things to ask you because you got a tremendous football mind and tons of respect has been gained. Okay. Are you big on the draft? Interested in, you follow a lot of the draft? Or are you more like breaking down exactly what the NFL is about?
Oh, I'm a draft junkie. I love it.
Okay.
Mainly because it's the only time of year where every team has hope, right?
Yeah, right. All 32 are all in. Okay, so draft junkie. If you had to pick 1 or 2 players that stand out to you that are going to have a big impact on teams this year, who are they?
This is going to be so out of left field.
No, I don't like it. There's nothing that's left field. It's educated. You're going to make an educated decision here, and you're going to speak it. And some fan who watched no football is going to tell you what you don't know. I love it. Give it to us.
Keon White, who's a 2nd-round pick with the Patriots out of Georgia Tech. Freak athlete, right? He's like 6'5", 285, dynamite in his hands. They played him at 3, they played him at 5, they played him at 9, and he was all up and down in the front for Georgia Tech. He was their best player. And the Patriots took him, and I actually thought they could have taken him at 14. Like originally, I was like, hey, I don't know if it's going to happen, but if he's going to go in the first round, like that's where it starts, is at 14. They got him at like 48, I think it was, and he is such a Patriots defensive lineman because, as you know, the Patriots have the wildest group of fronts. Like they will just take dudes and line them up everywhere. They'll take a 285-pounder and stand him up in front of the center. Like they'll play him at 9, they'll play him at 3, they'll play him at 5.
And they're all big, strong,
they're all huge. They're all huge.
heavy guys. Yeah.
But the fact that Keon's such a good athlete, I mean, there were some times where it's called a peel technique, which is like a way for defenses to do a post snap like flare control. If they are -1 to the edge in coverage, whoever's on the edge, like you're peeling, buddy. There's nobody else. Like you're taking that wheel out from the running back, and he's 285 pounds and did that. A lot of defenses, if they realize they're -1, they're like, oh, we got to get to something different. Georgia Tech didn't, because this big defensive tackle looking dude could literally turn on a dime and get on his horse and run with a running back down the field on a wheel route, which is nuts. And Bill's going to exploit the hell out of that. So I love him as a fit. You know, he's never going to be like the flashiest guy, but did you ever play against Adam Butler when he was there? Because when Bill,
the only guys I played against that I remember would be Judon, Hightower. Had my hands full with them. I don't remember. And no disrespect to Mr. Butler. I had enough to worry about.
No, Hightower's a monster. But what they would do with Adam Butler is when they would call zero, right? Like how they specifically call zero is the interior 4 guys are reading the slide, right? And so wherever the center's eyes go, those guys, it's like, I got your attention. I did my job. I'm dropping out. And so
that is something new. That is something new. And I'm sorry.
Oh, and it's a pain in the ass. Yeah.
Well, you see Miami doing it, which is part of New England. But in your breakdown, you see it. If anybody, essentially, folks, for those who are listening and not watching, or watching and need to explain, and I'm sorry for cutting you off, Brett, but it's a great point. It's when the O-lineman set to you and touch you, that means the O-lineman, the room in the O-line room, tight end rooms, you touch him, you buy him. So you go and set to that guy, you put your hands on him, he's yours. He drops into coverage, the guy comes right behind you because he wasn't touched. So it's a shit show, for lack of a better term, and it's really hard to stop.
And they would, and the thing with Adam Butler, again, very unheralded player, is when he would get you, like he'd get the center, and he's like, you're mine, cool. And this is like half second into the play, right? Even then, he could still put his foot in the ground and get 10 yards deep and fill that middle hole as a defensive tackle after doing his job and getting the slide to him. And not only would he get into that middle hole, but he would also, you know, turn his eyes and scan like he's a linebacker dropping in a hot zone. He would scan, and if he didn't see anything coming, he's like, well, it's probably coming from the other way. And he would literally just drift into where he knew that receiver was coming behind him. And it's like, that's insane. Like he took away the window without even, he just felt it, right? So it's like, not only did he draw the slide and open up, but he got not just in the window, but in the part of the window where he knew the receiver was going to be based on the timing of the play. And I'm like, God, that's special. And I think Keon White's going to be that, but mix in freak athleticism. And that's why I love that pick.
And that's like the AFC, right? It's like, I mean, everyone's big and a pain in the ass. Trust me, from a tight end who's 255 trying to figure this out. But you play the AFC North, it's like, you better be ready to rock.
Yeah.
You know? Like, be ready to bring your lunch pail, which I love. It's the type of guy I am, but it's a different beast. Like, you can hear it when you talk about different teams. Like, each division has their own personality. Really. It's really unique. And in a fan's perspective, man, I'd see it. But when you're in the meeting rooms, you're like, well, this guy's 330. This guy's 285. This guy, and you're like, oh, these guys are another 20 pounds heavier than the last team you played. Now, they have their pros and cons, right? Just like anything. No one's perfect. But you know, there's a lot to unpack when it comes to different divisions.
It's like when you were at Temple, were you under Rule at Temple?
Yeah.
Yeah. That
14, 15, and 16.
That whole culture there at that time, you guys were fucking psychopaths.
Like,
that was insane. Like, okay. have you ever talked about the prestige of getting a single-digit number under rule at Temple and like what
I
that
have not
meant?
talked about it on the show, but yes, you can.
That if you were a single-digit number at Temple in that era, you were probably a serial killer. Like there was no other way to get that.
Or a second contract guy in the NFL at this point in time.
Yeah, very true. Very true.
Third, fourth. Yeah, I mean, I transferred in from the University of Florida, and we're just getting to know each other. So I was the number one tight end in the country coming out in 2012. I went to the University of Florida. Will Muschamp wanted to be offensive wise, the next Alabama, beat the shit out of people, run the ball, right? And at the time, that was Alabama was kicking and screaming. They still are kicking, but they were it. They were it. It wasn't any Georgia like that, like it is now. It was Aaron Murray, Georgia, who was still good, but not Bama.
Yeah.
So that year, to put in perspective for people listening, was Notre Dame getting blown out year. We were third in the country. They were second. Notre Dame was 1, Bama was 2. So, or whatever that was. So to make a long story short, I ended up breaking my foot, get medically disqualified from University of Florida, and I had to leave, had to transfer. I was devastated. I met my wife, all her friends. Football wise was a perfect match. It's everything I wanted and more. It was my dream come true for a Philly kid, right? Awesome. Well, I had no offers when I had to transfer. They're like, yeah, your foot's done. These Florida doctors are telling me you should never play football again. I was like, well, shit, I'm going to the NFL. I'm playing football. It's going to happen. Whether it's happening here or Division III, whatever, I'm going to play. So Montana, because of Marty Morningweg and Skylar Morningweg, who was my roommate in Florida, they gave me a scholarship. And they're my first one, which I don't talk about a lot because it doesn't add a lot to the story. Shout out to Marty for making that happen. Great people, good football mind for sure. And yeah, long story short, I ended up going to Temple. Matt Rule was my only offer, and I got there. And I walked into the first practice, and I was like, holy shit. This team should be playing at the University of Florida. The best players should be. And there was a lot of them. And there was a lot of guys.
I think Reddick was there, right? Hassan Reddick?
Hassan wasn't one of those players at the time, though. Hassan was a DB trying to figure out like the rest of us.
Yeah.
You know, I'm talking like Tavon Young. I'm talking Tyler Matakevich. This guy, Kyle Friend, who people may not know about, but bounced around on practice squads around the league, should have been in the NFL for 10 years. The guy was a 45-rep bench press guy, 225, ran like the wind. He was like an all-state wrestler, like just stupid. Deion Dawkins is on every NFL Network commercial. The whole D-line rolling 2 sets of 4, like a hockey line change, was either guys that have led the CFL or NFL at sacks at one point in time, or TFLs. I mean, it's just stupid. I couldn't believe it. Everyone's like, you're a Temple guy. I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm a University of Florida guy who transferred in there.
Yeah.
When I was at Carolina, at one point in time, our huddle was PJ Walker, me, Robbie Anderson, Keith Kirkwood, and Ventel Bryant, all Temple guys in a 7-on-7 period in one play, which was really cool. So
yeah,
I digress, but that team, you're either undersized and not going to play to the league and you're a nut job, or you're an NFL player. That was the difference. That was it. It was unique as hell. And you can't explain it to people other than now we have these debates all the time in NFL locker rooms. I'm like, just look at our roster. Like, this is Temple.
No,
you don't understand. This isn't
Temple tough though, man. Temple tough.
This isn't like
was a thing.
Yeah, this isn't some big program. Like this. Look how many guys are in the NFL. Temple Tough's a thing. It was. It's coming back hopefully, but that was unique, and I think Coach will do it in Nebraska. There's no doubt in my mind.
So were you at Montana for a full season?
No, I never went to Montana. They were just off. They just offered me. So I went Florida 12 and 13, and then Temple 14, 15, 16. Then I went Giants, emergency appendectomy on their back. Ben McAdoo got cut. And then back Zach Miller.
McAdoo. Don't even
and you know what? Everybody says that. I love the guy. Oh, listen, I don't know what it looks like from a 10,000-foot view because I'm in it and I love it. And I love that guy and I love the grind, you know, love that guy's work ethic and who he is. Like, love the person. So I can't speak about what it looks like from a 10,000-foot view offensively and all that from your perspective, but I love the man. And when I was with him in the Giants, I hated him because he used to get on me all the time. And I stunk, you know, I was a rookie and I undrafted guy when they drafted Evan Ingram. I should have got ridden. So yet
you and Evan were both in the league, you know, last time I checked, like, you know, it's like 2022 there.
Yeah, it's crazy. So I get cut from there. And then I went Bears. When Zach Miller blew his knee out, I had a workout.
Yeah,
and
I remember that.
There was like 5 of us there, and I won it, which was like the coolest thing in the world. I didn't even know what was going on. You know, I'm like just happy to be in the league. I wasn't ready to be on the active, but I was definitely ready for the practice squad. And kept developing. The day they traded for Khalil Mack next year with Nagy, I got cut. Coached finance, did play-by-play color commentary for Temple Football Radio, for Philly Sports Talk Radio for 3 years. I was in and out of the league after the Bears, XFL, AAF, Birmingham Iron, Tampa Bay Vipers, and then 3 years in Carolina with Coach Rule. So it's been a great run. I'm a free agent at 29. I feel the best I ever felt, and I'm ready to go. Hopefully sign with the team here soon. But, yeah, man, it's been quite the journey.
Well, I know you're going to be on a team just because it's hard to find a why. Like it's not a common thing.
Everybody carries one of them, right? It used to be they carry 3 or 4. Like
Mercedes Lewis is like a grandfather, and he's still playing because he's a good why. Like it's hard to get. It's hard to get, man.
We'll see. I'm leaning out, man. I'm staying lean and ready to go, and yeah, it's a fun thing. As I digress here.
Would you ever go coach with Coach Rule at Nebraska if given the opportunity?
I can't confirm nor deny that there was an opportunity given at one point in time.
Oh, there we go.
And him and I always talk freely, you know.
Yeah.
It was tongue in cheek probably, but he knows I'm still going. So when I'm done,
29, you got, as far as tight end years go, you got another 8 years left in you. So.
I hope, man. If I could do 8, are you kidding me? I would like to get a couple more. That's for sure. And we'll see. It's as you know, this is a crazy business, and you could be somewhere tomorrow. I've been like ready to go on vacation, and all of a sudden you get a call and you're gone. And I've been sitting on my couch waiting for a call, and New Orleans called me at like 9 o'clock at night on a Thursday, and they're starting minicamp the next morning, and I had to get on the last flight out of Newark. And I got down there and played the best football of my life. And I I was training, but I wasn't like whatever, I was like just trying to stay in shape. And Dan Campbell was tight end coach. I had the best minicamp of my life, best 3 days of football I ever played, ever. And they made me stay around, which they normal, right? And I didn't sign. Which is fine. Ended up signing my buddy Mike Burton, the fullback, who's a great friend of mine, in Kansas City, now with Denver. I'm interested to see what Denver's going to do this year. I'd love to be there, of course. My buddy Chris Manhurst, I think he's one of the best blocking tight ends in the league. He's there. Mike McGlinchey, another buddy, friend of the show. Right tackle, I think is a great signing. They're going to beat the hell out of him.
He's Matt Ryan's cousin, by the way.
Oh, yeah. We all grew up together. Mm-hmm.
You did? No way.
Yeah. So there's the one brother, which is the last name Lockery, who is Doug Flutie's backup at BC. Also Mike Mayock's best friend. So there's Lockery. And then it's 6 sisters that married different families. One married a McCain, one married a Ryan, one married a McGlinchey, all these Irish Catholics from Philly.
Yeah.
And that is what the majority of our athletic population is made up of. And yes, and archdiaconos, if you know follow NFL, if you follow NBA basketball and college basketball, Arch and his brother, and all his cousins are all Division I players too. So that's like the big guys in our area. Yeah, so Mike grew up 5 minutes from where I went to high school, and I played with his cousins. Matt, the McCains, his first cousin, was our captain, and when I was a junior. So yeah, I know the family well. Yeah, it's good stuff.
No,
they're good.
That Eastern PA, Jersey pocket.
Oh yeah,
there's like a lot of talent that comes out of there.
Tons. Like that debate is not even the same with Pittsburgh anymore. Jack's in the back and he's pumping his fist. He played at Hatboro Horsham, which is maybe the worst football team in the area. But he played there, and I love you, Jack, for it. You're a stud. You're a starter. Yeah, it's strong. It's stronger than Pittsburgh now when it was not before.
I think it's funny because I'm going to Pittsburgh actually next month, and I got friends from there. And
great city.
They're like, we got Revis, we got Donald, they're naming all these Hall of Famers, and that you almost don't realize have come out of Western PA, and you're like, wow, they actually do have a crazy roster, right?
Mike Dick, it wouldn't be. It's not as new school. I'm not even saying it's that old school either. But it was like when I was growing up, it was like Pittsburgh was it. Mm-hmm. And now it's Pennsylvania. I mean, St. Joe's Prep alone, DeAndre Swift, John Runyon's son, Trotter, Marvin Harrison Jr. We have 5 guys in the league out of Archbishop Wood. So, Kyle Pitts, Raheem Blackshear, Ryan Bates, Greg Webb. So we have a lot of guys. So yeah, it's a great area. It's loaded for sure. It's good stuff.
Yeah,
That's good Matt Ryan knowledge out of you.
Well, because I heard it and I was like, I mean, same general area. It's like I get it, but it surprised me, right? Because the age difference. I was like, interesting. Now I grew up. If you're familiar with like Southern California Catholic high school football, modern day, if you've heard of it.
Yeah.
So Bryce Young. Hey, we just got another Heisman winner and another first round pick.
Shocker.
I was in Matt Barkley's class. Bryce Young.
Matt Barkley's class. Hold on. Love Barkley. First off, he was in Carolina with us. Great dude. And a story for another day. Next time you're on, I'll tell that story cliffhanger about me being active and him being inactive because it was Cam Newton, PJ, and Barkley. And they didn't want Cam just got there and couldn't do 2 minutes. So if PJ got hurt, they couldn't do 2 minutes. So they put Barkley down, added me up last minute when it was supposed to be the other way around. I'll tell that story on another day when I retire because it's actually got
he's a great guy.
Love Barks. Super strong. He looks like this kind of average fumpy quarterback. No, dude's a beast.
And he's been that way since he was 14.
Guy's a beast. He's a beast. I'm a huge Barkley fan. We were together probably 2-3 days. Had a couple you can't even say it, COVID. You couldn't drink together, but had a couple beers together. Sorry, peeps. And just a good dude. But okay, as we wrap, what do you think about the first overall pick? How's he going to do in Carolina? Loaded roster. I think he'll be fine.
So I say this, and again, the modern day coaching staff when Bryce first transferred in, they had been there for a long time. Like they had also coached Barkley. They had coached, some of them had coached Leinart, Colt Brennan, just a huge string of guys that went D1 and NFL. Like there was a time where it was abnormal for a modern day quarterback to not eventually go to the NFL. Like this huge string. And, Bryce, I think he was in Pasadena at the time, called Cathedral, I think was the school. And he was coming off the heels of JT Daniels, who was a couple of years ahead of him. And JT was at modern day setting every single CIF record. He was breaking all the records that Matt set in 2009. That was our class. And JT had offers from USC and Bama. And he eventually went to USC and then transferred. And now he's at West Virginia. I think he's there now. But regardless, JT was seen as like the guy. And then Bryce was coming up a couple years behind. And I happened to run into his offensive coordinator, future offensive coordinator, Coach Money, that summer when he was transferring in. And we talked at the gas station for like 90 minutes, right? It was the middle of the night. We're just at a random gas station talking ball. And he was talking about some of the guys that he's got going D1. And then he's like, oh, we got this kid coming in, Bryce Young. And he looked me dead in the eyes and he's like, he hasn't taken a snap for us yet. But we've just been doing meetings and doing installs. And he's like, I'm telling you, this is the best one we've ever had. Hadn't even played a single game yet. He's like, this is the best one we've ever had. And he's been there for like 30 years. And then, yeah, he was the best one they ever had. So, the fact that he lived up to all the expectations and then exceeded them and, went to Bama, won a Heisman, went first overall. The modern day quarterback tradition is unlike any other high school in the nation. And he's still the best out of all of them.
There it is. The great Brett Kollmann. We'll see. I think offensive line wise, Corbett comes back healthy. They don't really get much better than what Carolina has. I think losing DJ Moore hurts.
Oh, Ekwonu, by the way. Ekwonu, we need fuck.
He's just casual, man. He's a super casual all the time. And he's just dominant. Him, Moten, Bozeman.
This is going to sound crazy.
Bozeman, stud.
Bozeman's a monster. I will say, so this is going to sound crazy. Like, Icky reminds me a lot of Trent. Like, a lot.
Yeah.
I think he's gonna be that.
Light on their feet. I mean, crazy light on their feet. I mean, Icky is just I use the word casual. He's very and not casual in a bad way. He doesn't ever look like overwhelmed. It's like, dude, this is the NFL, and he's just dun 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 boop, gotcha, dun 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 boop, gotcha. And you're like, holy shit, this guy's a stud, man. So light on his feet. Great guy too.
They drafted his former partner in crime at left guard at NC State, Chandler Zavala, in the 4th round. And I talked to Chandler for extended like 15 to 20 minutes when I was at the Shrine Bowl, and he was there. Somehow didn't get a combine invite. No idea how. He was incredible. And they drafted him, and you're going to have to watch this kid next year. I think he's going to start. I really do. Former soccer player.
In Carolina, they drafted him?
They drafted him in Carolina.
It was like 6th round or 5th round.
They got him in the 4th. I'm actually surprised he got
Okay.
out of the 3rd. But he's a former soccer player, and you know how valuable that can be for an offensive lineman, being able to like actually move and having footwork and balance and all that kind of stuff. Mean as all hell, super smart. He's gonna start, man, as a 4th rounder. I swear to God,
We'll
he's
see.
so good.
The thing is, they have Brady Christian, who's a stud.
Brady's
BYU.
awesome. I think Chandler would be on the other side.
You got Austin Corbett, who's coming off the ACL, who could be, in my opinion, one of the best guards in the entire NFL. And then you have Cade Mace, who is a former All-American and all at Georgia.
That's
then
right.
Tennessee.
I forgot they do have him.
And then Big Bosey at center. So it's a loaded
Yeah.
group. It's a loaded. And I believe Elfline's coming off injury there still too. So when I was in Carolina, now last year we were loaded, but the last couple of years, 2 years before that, it was like it was a tough battle offensive line wise. It's a lot of injuries, a lot of guys not paying out, whatever it may be. It's a strength, and it may be one of the best, if not the best position group in the NFL offensive line wise. Now, especially after a lot of the free agency this year, with the Niners losing Bunskill and McGlinchey, and like I'm talking moving forward. I'm trying to think who else would be the Eagles,
with that
of course.
Group though, the fact that they traded Christian and there was zero fall off in rushing production. Like Foreman stepped in,
doubled down.
It's just like we're just gonna run over everybody. Like doesn't matter who's getting the ball, we're just gonna run over everybody. Like that was insane.
James Campen, the O-line coach there, is about as good as they get. I've been around. Love the guy, character, former NFL player. Great stuff, dude. 53 minutes. We could literally go 53 hours, and we will. I look forward to having you back on if you join us. Guys, check out Brett Kollmann across all social media. Love your YouTube, man, and love talking football. This flew by. Thanks for joining the show.
Thanks for having me.